Hi everyone, it's Jen again. I'm here with another developer update this time around, and I guess I just needed some time to kind of process my thoughts on sort of my post game jam, I guess, mentality, and just sort of the feelings that I get and emotions that I get after I've started launching any one of my games. I'm not the type of person who will wait until I have a perfectly polished product to start sharing it with the public, as I really do like having that back and forth of like kind of creating and getting a little bit of feedback and then creating. And I feel like my end products are better for it, that I can have some player feedback, because I don't have a lot of play testers or just variety of different people in my life that would be willing and able to test out my games. Nor do I have like access in real life to like a lot of the type of players that my game would be geared towards. So those are some of the reasons why, even though I know it causes kind of a lot of like complex emotions in me, why I choose to post my games before they are finished. So let me talk kind of candidly about some of like the struggles that I have after I post a game. I've talked extensively before on these videos how I firmly believe that like having a present and process focused mindset can really make game development a lot of fun, and for me it is like a form of decompression. But I hit this kind of weird spot after I publish a game where I'm like hoping for some feedback to give me a little bit of direction on where I should be taking my game. And I guess there is a part of me that, even though intellectually I don't feel like I need validation in order to continue like with my hobbies, is looking for some validation. And if it seems like my project doesn't have very much interest, then my mind starts to go to this place of like, well, maybe this isn't a game that's worth like continuing. Like, I got my idea out there, I got a demo out there that I feel like represents the core ideas of what I'm trying to achieve. And if it doesn't connect with anybody, I already know the whole story, the whole core idea in my own mind. So is there any real purpose to like fully executing this idea to completion if I've already given people like a decent impression of what I'm striving towards and it doesn't resonate with people? Like, I have a finite amount of time on this earth and I have a lot of ideas, so maybe it's just time to move on to the next idea. And so that's kind of what I've done with like Hungry. That's what I've done with Soul Labyrinth. And to an extent, that's also what I did with I've transmigrated as a villainess. So like, I just felt like I put out a pretty good representation of like the ideas that I was like trying to express. And then if there wasn't a lot of interest in those things, there didn't seem to be any purpose in like bringing those projects to completion, because in my own mind I already know how everything unfolds. So if I'm just doing it for myself at that point, like, is there any real reason, or should I at that point just kind of move on to another idea and see if I have something else that might resonate with people? And so that's kind of like where my feelings were with the Otome Jam project, even though I had every intention of like starting it from complete to finish regardless of feedback or interest, because I purposely had designed it to be a shorter project that I feel like I can definitely easily finish within like half a year's time frame. So like that's not a lot of time in my life to give up to finishing a project, regardless if people like respond to it or not. And so I had that mindset going into the gym that I was going to just continue with development despite what anybody had to say or didn't have to say about my project. And then when it launched, and you know, it's been performing about on par with my other projects. But I think that like maybe not having much reviews or feedback about it kind of did get me second guessing myself again, that I was like, oh, maybe I should go back to working on one of my other projects or another idea that I have, because I'm always getting like a constant influx of like new ideas. So that doubt and that kind of like, oh, well, maybe, you know, I should just move on, like type feelings like came up again. And so I sort of spent the last 2 weeks just kind of dabbling all over the place, just kind of like doodling different ideas out and like kind of just thinking about where I wanted to go forward. And at one point I really had decided that I wasn't going to finish A Villain's Heart. I thought, well, you know, the core idea of it is out there. Like anybody who plays the demo is basically playing like half the game, and they should have like a really good idea of what I was trying to say. And if that's not for people, you know, then what is really the point of me finishing it again? Is it just for like my own self-hubris? Like I already know how it ends, so like for myself, do I really need to complete the game just for myself, you know, for my own self-satisfaction, when I don't really need that sense of finality or conclusion in my own mind, because it's just a matter of execution at this point. Like I don't even have really any new coding mechanics to bring to it. I don't have any new I don't have much new artwork that I have to add to it. A lot of it is just scripting out dialogues that have already kind of been tucked into the back of my brain. And just like adding details to conversations that the characters have to like kind of like flesh out the ideas to make them more palatable and digestible for like outside consumption. So that's like the biggest hurdle that I run into after I launch a demo, is that I guess it's sort of like my way of like sort of testing an idea. And whether or not I feel like I should go forward with it, or if I can just kind of say, well, I got that idea out, and now I can move on to like my backlog of all these other ideas that I never finished or I never even got started on. So that's where I've been for the last 2 weeks. And you know, I did get kind of tired of just kind of dabbling around on stuff, and I was looking to really like commit to something for the rest of the summer, and I was feeling kind of restless with just like, you know, just sketching around, so to speak. And so I usually don't ask people in my everyday circles like their opinions on my projects and things. We usually talk about other kind of stuff. But I did speak with one of my colleagues, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'm feeling a little bit lost right now. I want to go hard on something. Like I'm ready to jump back into things with my personal projects, but I'm kind of being torn in like 3 different directions, because there's like 3 different ideas that I have mulling around, and I don't know how to commit to one. And he was just sort of like, just commit to one. Like, duh. Like, right now you're saying you're unhappy because you want to commit to something, and you have like 3 possibilities that you can commit to, so just like commit to something. It doesn't really matter like which one it is, because you can just like stop if you don't like it and do a different one. And I was like, yeah, of course, that's really silly of me to like have this mental block in my mind that you know, once I commit to something, I can't just like not commit to it if it makes me unhappy, especially when I want to commit to something. So I basically just flipped a coin And the coin said, just continue working on Villain's Heart, finish it up like you originally planned. And so immediately I got started writing out some tasks based on just like picking it up again this week. And so I still have my original plans to finish it by the end of the summer. August 30th is still my goal. And yeah, so I've been pretty happy this week because I'm always the happiest when I'm being productive and I feel like I have a clear like path, like a clear delegation of tasks that I want to do and complete. And I like being on a schedule. Like, I don't know, I'm just kind of weird like that. That's just the way I'm wired for whatever reason. So getting back into development, another thing that kind of popped up this week was I had a patron who was consulting me about starting a game development project in Renpy, and he was asking me kind of like, where do I start? Because he was looking at the code of my projects, and if you were to compare like my project to something like the demo, when you open up Renpy, you have that little project called like the question. And if you were to compare my scripts to the question, it's kind of difficult to like follow around, right? Because I start out with all these like object property declarations, and then I have my start label. So like, okay, this is I guess where the beginning starts, and then I have like my beginning script, where it's kind of like just the dialogue prologue of it, and that's like relatively easy to follow. But once you leave that beginning script, then you start getting into these more kind of modular files, because I have like the freedom of player movement and I have random encounters in my game. So suddenly you go from like being able to kind of follow this straightforward script of like, okay, you have these little menu choices that branch back to just the main narrative here, so that's not hard to follow. But when you get to this part with the dungeon, where you're exploring the dungeon, now suddenly you have like these separate scripts for every room. You have this map. This is like the blueprint, along with like the screen language for displaying your current location in that map. You have these different call statements. So like when you enter a room, you have this like random call statement that will basically do a roll to see if you run into any enemies there. And if you run into an enemy there, then you have this whole like battle encounter script, where you have like your sprites and your displays and your dice rolls and your evaluation of those dice rolls and the calculation of all like the enemy bonuses and player bonuses and the chance for like the different skill triggers. So like it suddenly goes into all these like different places. And then also you have all this conditional dialogue. So you no longer have, when you enter these rooms, like straightforward dialogue anymore. You have conditional dialogue that pulls from these various like chat call statements that give you different dialogue paths depending on the player's actual progression through the rooms. So these are not location specific, but rather like discovering new rooms and how many times you've revisited the rooms. Then you start getting these this call statement if you've revisited the room, and then you get this call statement if you revisited the room like X many of times. And then you also have like quest specific dialogues that trigger if you happen to get into a room that's like has like the stuff with the quest. So these are all like kind of like these free floating dialogues that don't trigger, that have conditional triggers, but they don't unfold just like in a linear way where you can like read down one script and like follow its jump and be like, okay, yeah, this is where I go, now this is where I go. Like, it's kind of hard to follow my my scripts. And then you also have like specific dialogues to this dungeon with based on like conditionals, like how many times you've lost, how many times you've won, and then some of it's like randomized after a while. And those are how kind of like the dungeons work. And then when you leave the dungeon and you're in the castle and you have like different tasks you can do in there, then you have this hub, but this hub brings you to all these different these other different rooms that give you different random options, randomized options, as well as like set statements depending on what variables the player has triggered and which ones they haven't. So like quickly this game kind of spirals in from what would be like a typical straightforward, you know, Renpy project to like this project where like it's kind of very difficult to follow, looking at it, like where the player is actually going to be bouncing around unless you're actually playing the game to kind of like see what's triggering, and then you can kind of like see, okay, let me look for that in the scripts, but the scripts could be almost like anywhere, you know. And I even run into that problem myself because like working on importing my warfare mechanic is like all these files here to just like display and keep track of the player's like inputs and be able, all these additional like scripts were necessary for me to figure out like how to basically do like consecutive battles, even though I like basically integrated this original battle system to my warfare system. Like I needed to make all these additional scripts just to be able to expand the original battle mechanic to being able to do 3 battles in a row. So what it looks like here in my game, like if I load this, oh, actually I think, yeah. So if I load this and then I go to the practice grounds where it loads up like a simulation of the warfare, even though the war hasn't actually started yet in this game. It's just changing the original kind of like setting 3 players to setting 3 different waves of parties. And these enemies are also like randomized here. So the first wave of enemies, I'm going to go with like Earth on this. And I don't have any duplicate factions, so I can just settle on elements. No water in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and use Mieta, and then I don't actually have any Earth either in that last slot, so I think I'll go ahead and use Jeth. And we have no Earth elements here, so I think I can go ahead and make this a water heavy team to counter it. Along with like, I think I'm gonna go DPS heavy on that. So here I think I will go ahead and yeah, maybe I'll go with another air rogue and I'll go with fire rogue here. And this also randomizes like the enemy difficulty. So this is a level 2 enemy. So I want to make sure that I try to have as best faction and element bonuses as I can, because I don't know whether or not it's going to play a major role in whether or not the bonuses are going to affect the outcome of this. And of course, my elite units have very high loyalty at this stage of the game, so that's why I was kind of trying to spread them out, because even at a disadvantage of like enemy bonus here, I should be able to compensate for that when I have my morale boost active, as you can see here. So Michaelis will be able to mitigate the damage that I take on my non-bonus on the every other skirmish round where I can't get my morale boost, and then hopefully on the rounds with my morale boost I will have a high enough roll to mitigate that 6-point difference, which looks like how this is going to play out. So it's interesting how predictable these encounters can become despite like having a very wide range of like dice results. And this only becomes more apparent as the player kind of unlocks more mechanics of the game and has more strategy options and bonds available. You can have a lot more predictable victories. And then we move on to the next battle, which is a level 1 encounter. So my faction and element bonus here is small, but the enemy has no bonus, so we're doing alright.
Surrender now. Skill trigger. Whoa, lucky.
That's an easy victory.
Thank my Lord for mercy. Let's roll.
And we have another level 1 encounter here. So this was the one that I was the most worried about if I had run into a really high enemy level, but I think we're going to be fine. And my water mage has like pretty good bond levels up, so we should have this one in the bag. I would be very surprised if we lost this one. And there we go. So that is the warfare system. And it's just kind of like crazy like how many extra scripts that I had to add in order to like basically expand the basic battle system to be able to kind of keep track of all those like player and randomized choices for the enemies. Like I think I actually have more scripts for the warfare system than I do for the entire battle system. And I went off on a giant tangent showing you that, but the original question that kind of got me thinking about talking about this was the gentleman who was looking into creating a game in Renpy was like looking at my scripts compared to the question script and was saying like, how did you learn to make these systems? Like, where did you read out how to do that? And to be honest, like there might be solutions out there, but I basically just came up with them for myself. Like I've learned about like using object classes, and I've learned like through tutorials how to kind of create these functions for them so that I can modify them in the game. And I've looked at different documentation how to do some very specific things like the screen shake and displaying menus and how to use like text buttons and stuff. But as far as like my battle system and my map system, it really just came down to me like thinking about like how I could use variables and conditional checks to keep track of the player's choices, and then how I could display the proper either reaction to those choices or preserve those choices or make those choices affect the outcome. And so that's probably why my scripts are so like long, is because a lot of them are just these conditional checks to check for like what the heck the player chose, and like taking that choice or that randomized dice roll in account to displaying and having the properties of the proper unit deployment and the proper enemy deployment. So thanks to a viewer comment, I was able to condense a little bit of the scripts using I gotta remember where it is. I was able to condense some of the scripts using like this Python syntax to sort of auto-populate the choice that I could do by like having a set naming convention. But I haven't figured out how to do it with like object properties. So I feel like there must be a way to do that, and that's probably where a lot of like my research, when I try to like solve that problem, I come up with empty-handed, because I don't know if I don't know how to word properly the problem that I'm looking to solve. But regardless, I seem to be having a problem like condensing some of this stuff that I feel like I should be able to get rid of some of these conditional checks with all the various choices and be able to replace it with like a more modular function or algorithm. So that's probably where, like, once I have that breakthrough, it'll probably revolutionize my scripting. But right now I have a lot of very like tedious scripts that I just basically have brute force the logic to display and to keep track of the things that I want. And the reason why I don't really show these scripts or try to teach people to do things the way I do it is because I know it can't possibly be like an optimal way of doing things. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because I just want to encourage people to like not let that be a hang up. Like, if you have a vision for a game to perform in a certain way, like, don't let the not having a tutorial to show you how to do it, and don't let like not having a programming background like stop you from like trying to achieve what you're trying to achieve. You might not have like the most optimal way of achieving it, but there's probably, where there's a will, there's a way, with some very basic tools that I've pretty much like gone over with some of my tutorials in the past. Which again, I don't like doing tutorials because I know that like the way I do things are like probably forming bad habits, and it's probably like a crutch for like not having any actual programming background. So that is like one of the reasons why I do really appreciate the comments that I've gotten in the past where somebody has brought up like a solution to like better optimize like some of my scripts and stuff, and I do try to integrate those when I can. Some more just, I guess, fun stuff that I'm looking forward to implementing when we have turned in the 4th mission, the bonding quest. It gets rid of the option to like kind of grind the dungeons or the forest with like visiting the tower to build rapport with Data, and the training grounds. This allows you to build rapport with Mieta, Michaelis, and Jeth. Oh, I have to sleep. Some of this text is not finished. It's more kind of like placeholder kind of stuff. Because I'm focusing on getting all the functionality of things properly done. So one of the things that happens when you start preparing for the upcoming war campaign is that the Queen will ask you to go to a morning briefing every day. You can visit the tower every day, and you can do the training grounds every day. So if we go to the throne room, we will have a daily chat here. which I've started like penciling in the basic ideas of what the conversation is going to be. So Jeth is saying that he's kind of giving like a little bit of context to like what the situation in regards to Brookhaven is and why they are wanting to attack or declare war on this kind of independent city-state. They've declared themselves independent from the kingdom from the time before the reign of House Solana. So this is like a very awkward sentence that I'll definitely have to go back and edit. Despite their relatively close proximity, the former ruler had given them an informal pass due to their unique method of drawing beasts away from the capital. So that was something that was touched upon in the main story of the game when you are investigating the sewers. And having conversations with Bailiff as well, who's been doing a lot of research about like the whole issue with the beasts. Along with their isolated geographical position between the mountains and the scattered forest, they've been of little interest. However, they become more brazenly ambitious over decades sans oversight. Rerouting a portion of the Solwell River, they've been able to reach the coast under the veil of the forest. Every year, the commerce has been steadily increasing. No doubt they are forming merchant guild alliances with both animus and amicable fiefdoms, whilst trading and profiting off untaxed goods. The protection of the forest has always been the largest barrier to properly putting an end to this illegal activity. Thanks to my lord, the forest is no longer the pesky bear it once was. So this he's referring to kind of like the previous mission of driving out the bandits from the forest. I've confirmed with my spies that Brookhaven is indeed housing the fugitive forest bandit Katner. As a courtesy, we have already sent a request for his prompt expedition. They have 7 days to reply. Refusal to comply will grant us the authority to declare war, with or without the formal consent of the neighboring lands. In short, we have 7 days to mobilize our forces. So during this 7 days, we'll be having like a morning briefing with the queen and her 2 vassals, as well as being able to do a daily visit to the tower to talk to Dieta. And so, like, this conversation hasn't actually, I didn't finish scripting the end to it. So I'm going to reload here. I'll reload here. But that kind of gives you a gist of, like, the way that the game kind of, like, shifts into a slightly different mode. Oh, shoot, I guess I still have to sleep before I can go to the tower. So now I should be able to go to the tower to talk to Dieta. We have a new little background here. Oops, for some reason it didn't actually trigger the event. So these are the reasons why I only have like kind of like the bare bones of the conversations in place, is because I am trying to test. So let's look and see on my war folder. I have all these pre-war kind of preparation war files, and this is where like the tower becomes. So it looks like I didn't actually, I've been trying to keep track of the number of times that you talk to Dieta so that she doesn't say the same things over and over again. So we have to actually add that variable in there. And then that should trigger the conversation. I'm also limiting to once a day, so that's why that kind of like other variable is there. That resets upon sleep. So why can I not? If we refresh. The script, and it's probably not going to let me do it because I already did it, so I need to load this again. Oh, sorry, I need to reload this one because I don't want to talk to the queen. And then I have to sleep real quick. Okay, and now I should be able to go to the tower. And talk to Data. And here you can start having a side conversation with her. So the queen is no longer including her sort of in your missions going forward, because she is not one of her most trusted. So she's sort of completely out of the loop at this point, and this is where the game can go into two very different paths, where you either sort of like side with Data or you side with Mieta and Michaelis and Jeth. So that's sort of where the options are now. And you can just talk to her, or you can start like actually confiding with her about like the war and things that you shouldn't really be discussing with her because she's not, the queen doesn't really want her involved in any of this stuff. So yeah, that's the direction that I'm going with in my current development, and that's what I'm going to sort of be going pretty hard on in the next upcoming like couple months. And I'm looking forward to having another finished game under my belt, because it's been a few years since I've actually finished anything. And I guess I just hope that like talking about this, sort of like my own personal struggles a little bit, can help someone else like navigate those complicated feelings, because like regardless of how your project is received by the public, and regardless of like how logically you might be able to talk to yourself and tell yourself, you know, not to care so much about things like player feedback or player engagement, or you know, even if you are set on designing games for your own kind of enjoyment as a hobby, as I am, it's still really you still have those range of emotions that will affect you, because ultimately we are like creatures that are more ruled by emotion than we are by logic. And so a lot of times our logic is dictated by our emotions as a post self-justification. So if you are struggling with kind of like doing something that you know intellectually or logically that you should just be able to go forward, and you know what makes you happy, in this case I know what makes me happy, and like just working on these projects regardless, like I'm doing exactly what I was planning on doing. Like I knew all the way back then that this was going to be the way to go forward, and yet I still like stumbled after I launched my game, and it took me 2 weeks to kind of like get my act back together, and be like happy with developing again. And that is just sort of like a part of, I guess, being human and having emotions. And so like don't beat yourself up for it, don't look back, just move forward, because it's really not productive to go back at that 2 weeks and be like, oh, what was wrong with me? Like I could have saved myself all this like struggle if I just like went ahead with my original plan. Logically speaking, true, but like as a person with very strong emotions, like it just wasn't possible at the time. I needed those 2 weeks to go through whatever I went through to get back to where I am now. That's just something that needed to happen, even if like in hindsight it's a little bit frustrating, because I'm like, well, I could have been 2 weeks further in development if I just didn't go through that nonsense. But I am a human being with emotions, and that's just what happens. So sometimes we need time to work through those emotions to get back to back to where we want to be, and that's okay. It's a part of it. So it's just part of everything. All right. Take care. Enjoy the process. And if you are at a point where you're struggling or you're feeling a little bit lost, reach out to somebody. They might just tell you exactly what you've known all along, but you might just have to have heard it from someone. All right. Take care. Bye-bye now.